No, okay. Hello, everyone. Okay, so this week is a little bit different. The last couple of weeks we were talking about Jesus dying on the cross for us and his resurrection, but this week we're going to talk about why Jesus had to do that and what happened to humanity that started this whole thing. So, I have a question. Have you ever done something that you knew you probably shouldn't have done, and you did it anyway, and you realized later that it was a very big mistake? Well, I know exactly how that feels, and Emily does too. So, for me, this happened when I was still in school in 4th grade, and a friend of mine and I were trying to get back into class, and the door was locked. And so, for whatever reason, we found this little broken piece of plastic to try and unlock the door to get back in. And it worked. But later that day, we discovered that a piece of the plastic had gotten stuck in the lock, and the lock had broken. And no one in the school knew who had done it, and we didn't want to get in trouble, and so we didn't say anything about it, and I forgot about it for a long time. But then later, in my life, just a couple of years later, I felt God tell me that I was supposed to admit to that. And so I wrote a letter to the teacher, and all of that guilt and worry that I had felt when I was little completely went away. So it wasn't worth lying about it in the first place.
Oh, yep. I have also an example. Right now in church, you might know, we have rangers and rangerettes. We used to have something called missionettes, which is just when the girls of all kinds of age groups would get together and have church time, and it was great. It was on Wednesday nights. When I was in missionettes, I was with some of the older girls who I wasn't usually with, and I had scissors, like I'm going to have most of this video. And I don't know, I thought that it would be really neat if I cut a little end of my hair, just like the littlest bit, because it was kind of rebellious, kind of impressive. And this older girl saw me and she was so impressed. She was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just cut your hair. And so I thought the best thing to do in order to make, her more impressed was to just keep cutting at it and keep cutting at it. And I don't really know how it happened, but by the end of that night, there was a little pile of hair on the floor that I had cut off. I knew that I would be in trouble if this happened. And so I told the leader, I said to her, please do not tell my mom. Like, don't tell my mom I did this. And I was intending to lie and hide it from my mother. And that was my plan, but I got out of the car that night when we got home, and my mom stopped me before I got out of the car, and she said, why did you cut your hair at missionettes? And I felt pretty busted. But I knew that it taught me that the better choice was to, number one, not make a decision that I knew was wrong in the first place, and number two, admit to it right afterwards. So today, we're going to get into a story in the Bible where someone did something they knew they shouldn't have, and we're going to learn about how sin separates us from God and from real life. Let's read the story in the Bible.
But the serpent was clever. He spoke to the woman, do I understand that God told you not to eat from any tree in the garden?
The serpent, which is another word for snake, was smart because he knew how to twist God's rules and words to try to confuse Eve.
The woman said to the serpent, not at all. We can eat from the trees in the garden. It's only about the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, don't eat from it. Don't even touch it, or you'll die.
Well, that didn't work. She knew the rules and corrected him. Let's read on to see what happens next.
The serpent told the woman, you won't die. God knows that the moment you eat from that tree, you'll see what's really going on. You'll be just like God, knowing everything, ranging all the way from good to evil.
The serpent moved from trying to confuse her to making her doubt God's word and believe a lie. Then he placed a tempting thought in her mind. If she ate the tree, she would be just like God. She would know everything. The more Eve thought about it, the more she decided that kind of knowledge would be pretty great. What do you think you would have done with that kind of thought and temptation?
Let's read on to find out what she did. When the woman realized what she would get out of it, she'd know everything. She took and ate the fruit, and then gave some to her husband, and he ate immediately. The two of them did see what was really going on. When they heard the sound of God strolling in the garden in the evening, the man and his wife hid in the trees and hid from God.
Why do you think they hid from God? They felt guilt for the first time. What they thought would make them happy only made them feel shameful and guilty. They had sinned, and that sin separated them from God and real life. Their sin brought death instead of life. Just like Romans 5:15 says, For the sin of this one man, Adam, brought death to many.
God called to the man. Where are you? He said, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid, and I hid. God said, Did you eat from that tree that I told you not to eat from? The man said, Yes, I ate it. God said to the woman, What is this that you have done? The serpent seduced me, she said, and I ate.
Eve said the snake seduced her. That means he tricked her and confused her into doing something that she should not have done. Eve chose to follow the thought and listen to the devil. That one bite was all it took. Then Adam chose to do it too. The devil's plan worked. For now.
God said, The man has become like one of us, capable of knowing everything. What if he now should reach out and take fruit from the tree of life and eat and live forever? Never. This cannot happen. So God expelled them from the Garden of Eden.
Remember, our focus fact is that sin separated us from God and real life.
Because they listened to the serpent's lies, Adam and Eve felt shame and guilt for the first time. Their sin separated them from God and real life. It was like dying spiritually. If they stayed in the garden and ate from the tree of life, they would be sinners forever. God had to get them out of the garden and away from the tree until he could fix their mistake. Was it possible to fix their mistake? Of course it was. God can fix anything. Come back next week to find out how.
Remember, our focus verse is, The thief's purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. John 10:10. Welcome to my cupboard. I want to show you what happens to your relationship with God when the thief tries to tempt you and you choose to listen to him. This is corn syrup, but it represents me and you, or, any human on the earth. And this here is God. I know it's oil, but we're pretending it's God, okay? So just go along with it. This is God. This is water with food coloring in it, but it's also sin. Do you like my little sad face? That's how you really know it's bad. Using these three things, I'm going to show you what sin does to our relationship with God. Corn syrup is really hard to get out of the bottle, so be patient with me. So now we're going to pour God don't drop God, that would be bad. We're going to pour it on top of the corn syrup, and they're going to mix fine because they mix well together, just like us and our relationship with God. Now watch what happens when we add this red water, aka sin, to the mix of us and God. As you can see, there's a clear separation between God, sin, and us. Even if you try adding more God, or oil, into the mix, you can see that because of the presence of sin, it still separates us from him. Satan will tempt you in very subtle ways. He'll get you to think that it's not a big deal. But just like the water is separating the corn syrup and the oil, the presence of sin will separate you from God.
Keep in mind for these questions, they are going to be on Class Dojo, and also this is Jess's email. You can have your parents help you if you need, but email your answers to these questions because remember, if you answer these questions and send them in, you can get prizes in real life. Okay, question time.
Right. What happened that caused Eve to get interested in the forbidden tree?
Question 2. Recite today's focus verse. You can write that down. It's good to say it out loud, but make sure you write it somewhere and send it in.
What were the consequences of Adam and Eve's sin?
You are taking a math test. It's very hard. You can see the edge of your neighbor's paper. If you lean a little closer, like I have trying to read the story, you'll be able to see his answers. How do you avoid sin?
So this is another question, and talk about and think about how you might respond. You had a bad day at school. You got in trouble for talking when you were supposed to be working. When you get home, your dad asks how your day went. What do you tell him?
What do you tell him? Those are our challenge questions. Remember, make sure that either by emailing or answering on questions...
On Class
Make
Dojo.
sure, Class Dojo, that you send in those answers because you can get points and prizes for them in real life. We have loved doing this video for you today. We miss your faces and we are happy to see you when we come back together. We love you. Bye.